Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashyakritav Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaye Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om Nama Pranavarthaye Shuddha Jnanaikamurtaye Nirmalaya Prashantaye Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunattu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Yamadharmaraja had made a pratignya which contained two parts in the previous mantra. One is an answer to Nachiketa's question about Eyam Preti Vichikitsa Manushya. Is there something after the death of the body? And what happens to it? I will tell you about that. And the second pratignya he made was I will tell you about this Brahman. What is the nature of it that which survives death of the Sharira? And in the previous mantra, he had covered what happens to this, whatever it is that survives the death of the body. Where does it go? What form does it take? All that he covered in the previous mantra. So having addressed this, which is the second part of his commitment to the answer the question about Vichikitsa, or what is there? Is there something and what is that? And the first part of his pratignya was, what is it that is dharma anyat, adharma anyat api, kala anyat? I will explain to you now. He has already covered this in the previous mantras. Wherever you saw etad vaitate, it is the answer to his question. But repeatedly, Shastra covers this. And we know why. We know this is not something which is very easily assimilated and made my own. It's something everybody struggles with. That is why consistent commitment to knowing that becomes very important. Just because I attended 2 classes or 5 classes, I cannot say that everything's absorbed. It doesn't get absorbed. Because I still say, I have understood. The moment I say I have understood, who is the I? That problem will remain for quite a while. It doesn't easily go away. Recently, some people took sannyasa in this Shivratri. I was discussing with them what happened to them, and they were saying that something changed externally and within myself during this process of sannyasa. And I told them the same thing. I said, look, what happens? You were teaching before. You've been teaching for some years now. But now you're teaching after the change that has taken place within you. And then the grasping of this aparoksha jnanam becomes of a different level. Something happens to him, he was saying. It's true, it's absolutely true. Externally something happens, that's obvious. But internally something happens, which makes that process of teaching pure nididhyasanam. Nididhyasanam, as you know, is to remove the viparita jnanam, viparita buddhi. Despite repeatedly being told by Shruti repeatedly hearing it, constantly doing contemplation upon it, the world doesn't let go. Whether you like it or not, there's a lot of, and especially in today's world, it may have been, I don't know, but it may have been little less problem 1,000 years ago. I don't know. But certainly, the very process of changing to a sannyasa ashrama, where your entire focus is on the jnanam, well, the times were more conducive, I should imagine. You're trying to drop this abhimana with the sharira. Logically, you understand it, but it doesn't go. And current day society does not help in that process at all. They will immediately tell you, you have to go by train, please show an identity. What is the identity? Identity is for the sharira. I was born in so and so date with this name, and this is my photo. My height is this much. That is what you're doing. In an identity card, whatever card you use for identity, you're only identifying the anatma. So the current day society doesn't make it very easy. We do have an issue. It is bad enough that difficult, we keep calling it sukshma. Sukshma doesn't register as aham. And the entire society, the systems that we follow, does not make it easily possible. So Shruti says again and again and again, the idea of what is the Atma, what is I, repeatedly in different ways, in different kind of perspectives, to help us understand this. Even after all that, some people get it more quickly than others. Others, the bada are many more. They don't allow this jnanam to become assimilated, become aparoksha jnanam. So the variations continue. Therefore, one has to continue to do this as long as it takes, through this janma, maybe through the next janma, maybe whatever is required, without losing either one's focus on this purushartha, or getting frustrated, or getting disappointed, saying, at least let me enjoy what I can. I have now come to a stage in life when I make a lot of wealth. Let me at least enjoy it to the extent that Sharira can enjoy it, the other parts of myself, I can enjoy it. All that will come. Therefore, Yamadharma Raja takes it up one more time. I will tell you about what happens to that after the Sharira falls, but I will also tell you about idam pravakshami guhyam brahma sanatanam. Call that guhyam. Many places we've seen Ratra call it guhyam. Difficult to understand. It's secret only in the sense that as long as we continue to view it as an object, it remains guhyam. As long as we try to objectify it, not as a physical object, but as a karma, Vitiya Vibhakti, we will always see this as guhyam vishaya. So that has to go One has to then understand what Shastra says, what is the Lakshastam. So in that context, Shruti repeatedly tells us about the nature of the Atma, nature of the self, as does Yamadharmaraja here. So in this mantra, Yamadharmaraja takes up the nature of Brahman, that he calls Guhyam in the previous. What normally happens is that even when we are able to analyze this step by step, up to the body even I can say, oh, this body is not I. I ignore this body. But when it comes to the mind, and something we've been discussing in the other class, ahankara, it becomes very difficult to understand that ahankara, the mind, is also an object, cannot be the nature of aham. Therefore, we always mix up inextricably these two things. And there is the mind and the ahankara behind the mind. I has to be that only. There is no other I. There is no other Atma. Why do you try to force me to understand an Atma which I've already understood as my mind and my ahankara? I'm already an evolved student. I've realized that Sharira is not I, or the I is not the Sharira. But mind, it has to be that. Or okay, if you don't say mind, then maybe the whole Samuha is I. All that will come. So he takes up this mind question that I cannot be the mind. I cannot be the Sharira. It's a relatively easier thing to understand. Although every time you get up from the class and go to your work or go home or whatever you do, Sharira as I becomes re-established. So Yamadharmaraja says, Ya esha supteshu jagarti.
येषु सुप्तेषु जागर्ति
Kamam kamam purusho nirmimanah.
कामं कामं पुरुषो निर्मिमाणः
Tadeva shukram tam tad brahma.
तदेव शुक्रं तद्ब्रह्म
Tadevamritamuchyate.
तदेवामृतमुच्यते
Tasmin lokashrita sarve.
तस्मिन् लोकाश्रिताः सर्वे
Tadunatyeti kashchana.
तदुनात्येति कश्चन
Etad vaitat.
एतद्वैतत्
The mind, if not the entire Atma as the mind, at least say the mind is part of the Atma. If not, even if we don't say Atma is the mind. And Brahman, there is no separate thinking. Atma becomes the pramata. And say Atma is, I is Atma, that I is perceiving the whole world, experiencing the whole world. So the prameya is the whole world. Not recognizing that Chaitanyam is not part of the triad. It is not the pramata, it is not the prameya, it is not the pramana either. It is what makes the pramata, what makes the... See, this is where the important thing to understand is. All this pramata, prameya, knower, object of knowledge, knowing, all that belongs to the Jagat. Atma is none of them. And how do I understand this? Somehow my mind has to be pulled back and look at the totality and say, no, All this is okay. This is thinker, object of thought, thinking. All this triad is made possible by which that is I. In so many ways, we try to understand it. Because when you say knower, knowledge, and object of knowledge, you can also have the corresponding. The ignorant, object of ignorance, and ignorance also you can have. All this belongs to the Jagat. Both are made possible by this only one Atma. That Atma is I. It is neither the knower nor the object of knowledge, not even the knowing itself. It is not any of these things, is something which Shastra repeatedly tells us. Chaitanyam is outside of these. He is the Sakshi. That means the I idea has to be outside of all this. Not as the karta, as the knower, not as the object of karma. Nothing. So, Esha Shuptesh. So he takes it up very interestingly. That which, let's do an Anvaya on this. So, Esha Shupteshu Jagarti, Kamam Kamam Purusha Nirmimanaha, Tadeva Shukram Tad Brahma, Tadeva Amritam Uchyate. Tasmin Loka Shrita Sadve Tadu Natyeti Kashana. We'll do an Anvaya on this. This is like what? Esha Purusha, we'll bring the Purusha here. So, Esha Purusha Karneshu Shupteshu, when all senses are not available. Shupteshu here means not manifest. When all karanas are not available and only mind is available. So, Esha Purusha Supteshu, Karaneshu Supteshu, Jagarti. At that time, that which I am looking for, that Purusha is awake. That Purusha never goes to sleep. What is the state when everything, the Sthula Sharira, everything else becomes unmanifest except the mind? Prana we will give, the prana has to be there. Without that, we will not have a tomorrow. So, mind. So, Esha Purusha Karaneshu Supteshu Jagarti. This is what it remains awake. That is called the Purusha. What state will that be? That is clearly the Swapna Avastha. Swapna is taken as an example. Because our error is to do with assuming that I is the mind. Now the mind is awake. Swapna Avasthayam, what happens? Kamam kamam means what? All that you wanted, all that you thought of, everything that you thought of. Kamam nirmimanaha is created. Anything that you want is created in the Swapna Avastha by that mind. And what makes the mind project all this? We say the mind projects the dream, but mind by itself is jada. What makes the mind operate? Manaso manaha. That mind, that is what he calls Purusha. Tadeva Shukram. That is the pure, very poor translation for this, but literal translation is pure. You can't have a pure without an impure. Pure meaning here only. Tadeva Shukram Tat Brahma. That is Tat Brahman. That is what we call that which does not go when the Sharira dies. Therefore, Amritam Uchyate. Tadeva Amritam Uchyate. What is the nature of this? Tasmin sarve lokaha. Lokaha, we know this earth as one loka, called Martya Loka. But there are perhaps many more lokas. Shastra talks about 14 lokas. 7 higher lokas, including the Martya Loka, and 7 Patal lokas, Adaha. All these are included in loka. So, lokaha, all the lokas, tasmin shritaha. In what? In Brahmani. Doesn't say that, but you understand. Tasmin, that which is different from all the 3 avasthas. Avasthatraya vilakshana, sakshi. In that, the entire loka is shrita, dependent. Sarve lokaha tasmin shritaha. You say that all the lokas, including everything, known, unknown, near, far, small, big, sentient, insentient, all of them are dependent on this. This itself is not dependent on anything. There is nothing that transcends this. It is the only thing. I won't even call it ultimate. It is the only thing. That only thing is I. So he says, Tad u natyeti kaschana, natyeti kaschana. Tad u, indeed. Nothing transcends this. Kaschana padartha vishayaha, anything at all. Tad Brahma, that Chaitanyam, na eva atyeti. Atitya gachanti. Atitya gachati. That with nothing transcends this because there is nothing else. There is only one Brahman. The entire Jagat, all the lokas, whatever is there in the loka, everything is only dependent on this one Brahman. I'm using words like this, idam pada. It's not idam, aham. Tadeva aham. Very clearly, Dharmaraja says this. We hear this. We even process it. At the end of the process, there's still viparita bhavana. So we do it repeatedly. The self, the Chaitanyam, which keeps awake in that one state when everything other than the mind is not available. In that state, which is the Swapna state, it helps, or by its presence, in its presence, the mind projects whatever it wants. Amazing. Including time and space. You know, in a dream situation, you even create a new time. It is not the time that you use in your waking state. Very clear. A dream lasts a few minutes. I tried finding out how long an average dream lasts. I asked AI, how much time does a dream last on an average? They're not able to give me a very clear answer. A few minutes is all it says. You know how they check dream? Something called REM. REM is rapid eye movement. They, how they arrived at it, I don't know, but they say that is the period of the dream. Activity taking place in the mind. And that lasts for a few minutes. Now, in that few minutes, what are you projecting? Perhaps days, perhaps weeks, perhaps years. So the dream time may be a long period, but compared to the waking time is only a few minutes. So what have you done? You actually created a new time. Same thing with space. Where does the dream take place? In the mind, which is, we know, is not, anyway, my head, my whole body is only a small amount. I create a whole lot of space. I create institutions. And fortunately, all of us have this experience of dream world. Just that Swapna Prapancham, whole Prapancham is created. Everything possible. Kamam Kamam. We'll see in the next verse. Everything that you thought of is created. That which makes the mind create this whole Jagat is that Brahman. Tadeva Shukram Tad Brahma. Tadeva Aham. Tadeva Amritam. Now you know what moksha is. This simple understanding that Brahman, which is Amritam, is I. Amritam Uchyate. Because this is the only thing, the entire Jagat, Sarve Lokaha, Tasmin Eva Shrutaha. Na Anyaha Guhyam Brahman na Asti. So, na U, na Eva, Anyat Kashana Nasti. Ekmeva Advitya Brahman Tadaham. Introducing this verse, Shankaracharya writes one nice introduction. He connects verses. Yat pratignatam
Yat pratignatam
guhyam brahma
guhyam brahma
pravakshyami iti tad aha.
vakshyami iti tadaha.
So that the pratigna that Yamadharmaraja had made, he had already covered one portion of the pratigna. But this guhyam brahma, what it is, I will tell you, he said, pravakshyami. And to tell you that, he says in this mantra, iti tad aha, esha supteshu jagarti kamam kamam purusho nirmimanaha, tasmin loka ashrita sarve tadu nateti kash, tadeva shukram tad brahma, tadeva atma, tadeva amritam uchyate, tasmin loka ashrita sarve tadu nateti kashana. This is the nature of Brahman I am describing for you. In answer to your question, etad vaitat, that which you asked for, tat is this. So, Bhashyakara continues to explain this in his own way. Ya esha supteshu
Esha supteshu
pranadishu jagarti na swapiti.
pranadishu jagarti swapiti.
When all the senses, pranadishu means not prana. Prana doesn't stop, fortunately. Or unfortunately, I don't know. Prana doesn't stop. All senses, everything else in the Sukha Sharira and Sthula Sharira, they shupteshu, when they are, it literally means when they are asleep. So, that when they are asleep, saha, yeshaha, purushaha, sakshi chaitanyaha, jagarti, na swapiti. That doesn't, along with them, doesn't go to sleep. If it goes to sleep, if it is non-available, you won't have it tomorrow. Katham
Katham
Kamam kamam
Kamam kamam
tam abhipretam
tam avipretam
sriyadi artham
sriyadi artham
vidya nirmimanaha
vidya nirmimanaha
Nirmimanaha
nishpadayan
nishpadayan
jagarti purushaha yaha
jagarti
Jagarti
purushaha
Purushaha Yaha.
Katham, how does it remain awake when the other senses have all gone into sleep mode? Sleep mode. Computer terminology. All have gone into a unmanifest state. Katham kamam kamam tam abhipretam. That which you desired. Every desire. Kamam kamam. Every desire, every thought that came to the mind can be projected. Not all of them are projected perhaps, but can be projected. Tam abhipretam kamam kamam. What kind of kamam? Acharya explains that word. Sri adi artham. Like Stri. Avidya nirmimana. How does this come? Where does the kama come from? Kama is the source of kama is avidya. Why would you get kama? Why would you get desire for anything? If you understand moksha, even if one doesn't know moksha yet, if you understand moksha, there is no real kama for anything else. Why would somebody have kama for some silly little thing? You know, if there is a possibility of gaining suzerainty over a whole country, why would you want only a small village in the country? You may want then to gain it over the whole world like our current POTUS is doing, no? You may want to expand that. But if you got the whole thing, what is the purpose of saying, I want the small village? Of course it's included. And you can say, I want something outside of this also. But when you're talking about Purnatvam, there is nothing outside of that. And when you begin to understand that that is the thing that I want, and that is, Shastra says, it already is available to you. I only have to understand it. Then there is the kama of anything. That's why Shastra tells us, doesn't say don't have kama. Only says like a mudaha, don't get stuck in that kama. I want that one small village, no? Hey, you have the whole kingdom to yourself. Remember our famous example of a 3-year-old be given a choice between an ice cream and a fully loaded credit card? Mudaha, balaha. We just don't see this because we don't know that that's possible. Like balaha, they don't know what is the choice that's available. I like Swamiji's expression on this, choiceless choice. Once you understand it is a choiceless choice, you don't have any choice. But kama is there in the waking state that gets translated into projection of every one of them can be projected into swapna. Therefore, avidyaya nirmimanaha, by the ignorance that projects all this. Otherwise, why would you want all this? Avidyaya nirmimanaha explains as nishpadayan, creating. Pad dhatu, gatau. Nirmimanaha is also, interestingly, ma dhatu. Ma is mane. many meanings for it, but here, Nirmimanaha, in fact, in Hindi also we saw Nirman Karta, karte hain. You create something, you like that here, Nirmimanaha, having created, having projected. By whom? Jagarti Purushaha Yaha. The one who is up and about, but who does nothing, who is an akarta. But in the presence of the Purusha, the mind which is up and about, is awake, projects the whole Jagat. That which is awake at that time, that which makes the mind, manaso manaha, make it operate like a mind, is that Purusha. And that Purusha is Tadeva Shukram.
Tadeva Shukram.
Tadeva Shukram.
Shubram. Shuddham.
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 Tad Brahma.
Tad Brahma.
Nanyad Guhyam Brahma Asti.
Nanyat Guhyam Brahma Asti.
Tadeva Shukram, Shubram, Shuddham, all literally means same thing. It is pure. It is auspicious. It is vritti free. Ragadvesha free. Shuddham means same thing. Tat Brahma, that is the Brahman that you are asking for. That is the nature of that Brahman. Na anyat guhyam brahma asti. There is no other hidden meaning. There is no other Brahman. That which you cannot readily see separately because it is you, but you can see through the fact that the mind, which is jada, is able to project the entire kamam into your dream jagat. And that jadavastu, which is now creating the whole universe, is motored by, is driven by, is enlivened by that which is, whose presence does all that, is called Brahman, is you. Tadeva Shukram, Shubram, Shuddham, Tad Brahma, na anyat, there is no other guhyam. There is no secret. It is the most open secret. Right there in front of the eyes. That Brahma Hasti. That Brahman, the nature of the Brahman is Purnatva. Ajaha, Amara. All those words now can apply to that. And there are no qualities. Therefore, all that you can say is in terms of not this quality, not this, not this, not this, etc. Therefore, he says, Tadeva Amritam.
Tadeva Amritam.
Tadeva Amritam.
Avinashi Uchyate.
Avinashi Uchyate.
Sarvashastreshu.
Sarvashastreshu.
That Brahman, which is Guhyam Brahma, which is only Guhyam, which is not even Guhyam. Very funny. It is the most secret and is not secret. Because that Amritam, Avinashi, it is said to be Amritam and Avinashi in every Shastra, every Shruti says that. And so Shruti is our Pramana. It's very clear to us that that Brahman, which makes the mind operate. Therefore, please understand that mind is not I. It is not part of being a pramata, being jada. Only a Chaitanya Vastu can be pramata. And unless the mind is made to look Chaitanyam by a Chaitanya Vastu, mind cannot be Pramata. By itself, mind is not the Pramata. Nor is it the Prameya, nor is it the Pramanam. That Brahman, which is outside of this, outside of the triad, outside of the Dvandva, any Dvandva you take, make the triad a possibility, makes the Dvandva a possibility, that Brahman, in which everything has Ashraya. That Brahman is that Amritam Avinashi Brahman. That is what every Shastra describes. Every Shruti text describes. Every teacher tries to unfold. That Brahman. Why do you say that? That is the Amritam Brahma. Again, Bhashyakara takes it up further. He says, Kincha
किञ्च
Prithivyaadayaha
पृथिव्यादयः
Lokaha
लोकाः
Tasmineva Sarve
तस्मिन्नेव सर्वे
Mani Ashritaha
ब्रह्मणि
ब्रह्मणि
आश्रिताः
आश्रिताः
Sarvaloka Karanatvat Tasya.
सर्वलोककारणत्वात् तस्य
Sanskrit is a very interesting language. They put the words anywhere they want. If you want to understand it, you put it the way you want to understand it. So it becomes easy to understand. That's why Anmaya becomes important. Kincha, further, Prithivyaadayaha Lokaha, all the lokas, Chaturdash Loka according to the Shastra, all the lokas, Prithvi Adi, Adayaha, plural. Prithvi Adayaha, all the 14 lokas, Tasminneva, now you need to do the survey in between. You can put the survey in front. No? Sarve Lokaha, Sarve Prithvi Adayaha Lokaha, all of these lokas are Ashrita in which? In Brahmani, Saptami. In that Brahman, all of them are Ashrita. Because it is already said to be Amrita, Avinashi. It is not a Karya. Any Karya will have a date of birth. Any Karya we can pinpoint on a time scale, saying it was created at so and so time and became unraveled, destroyed at so and so time. So, it existed between T1 and T2. But this is Amrita, Ajaha, because it is not a Karya. Every Karya has a Karanam. This is our own experiences throughout life, that everything has a cause. Everything you take has a cause. And typically in our understanding, that cause has a cause, which itself has a cause, which itself has a cause, which is why I use the example of the Angavastram. Angavastram, the cause is fabric. Therefore, the Atma of Angavastram is the fabric from which it is cut. The Atma of the fabric is yarn, a combination of which creates the fabric. The Atma of the yarn is the fiber, and so on. Karyasya karanam, tasya karanam, tasya karanam, tasya karanam, tasya karanam. At some point, there is no further going back. There is only karanam. That Karanam, science is also beginning to understand is consciousness. They try to come up with words like universal consciousness because they are unable to match the understanding of the word consciousness that we use in day-to-day life. It's not the consciousness we're talking about. Awareness. Slowly, science is beginning to also look at that there is no matter, everything is only energy. I already said here. Now, that is why all these big Schrodinger and others go back and look, saying maybe an answer is here. Tasmin Brahmani eva. Tasmin here, Brahmani here. Sarve prithviyadeha lokaha tasmin Brahmani eva ashritaha. They have ashraya in Brahman, in that Brahman, which I've described to you just now. Because Sarvaloka Karanatvat, it is the very Karanam, if you want to use the word ultimate, it is the ultimate Karanam for everything. There is nothing else. And the beauty is that Brahman Aham. Therefore, I is the Karanam for the entire Jagat, including this body, mind, sense complex that I have, is also a Karyam of I. I the Brahman, I the Atma, I the Aham. This entire thing is a product of I. Therefore, I can stand up and say, I am Jagat Karanam, but the moment I say I am Jagat Karanam, my mind goes to things saying that therefore this body, mind, and complex is Jagat Karanam. No. I is Jagat Karanam. Ahamev Jagat Karanam. There is nothing else. Tad-u.
Tad-u.
Na atyeti kashana.
Na atyeti
kashchana
Ityadi purvavadeva.
ityadi purvadeva.
Purvadeva.
This Guhyam Brahma is not an object, and as long as you look at it as an object, it is Guhyam. But when I understand this, it is not Guhyam anymore because it is I. There is nothing that transcends this. There is no other Karanam for this. Tad-u na atyeti kashchana. Nothing transcends this. There is no other, you can't go looking for another Karanam for this. If you go looking for another Karanam for this, if you find that Karanam, that is the Atma. You have to stop somewhere, and that where you stop is the Atma, is you. Tad-u na atyeti kashana ityadi purvavadeva. Because this expression etad vaitat is repeat again and again and again. Every time Yamadharmaraja brings forth an explanation of Brahman, I, then we put in the word etad vaitat. Etad vai tat. This is that. The need is that. What? That which you asked for. In Nachiketa. He said that earlier also. So he's not repeating that. He's saying pur ityadi purvat eva. Etad vaitat. It doesn't stop here. Yamadharmaraja understands that we as human beings Find it very difficult to absorb this knowledge of Aham, the self. Shruti understands it. He is very compassionate. Remember how it started. By giving us a possibility of this Jagat. So that you don't immediately discard this whole endeavor. Oh, it's like this, okay. From this Brahman came, from this Atma came Akasha. Akashad Vayuhu, Vayor Agnihi, Agnihi Apaha. And Prithvi, Prithvyam Oshadayaha, Oshabdibhyo Annam, Annat Purushaha. Whole cycle is described for us. And then went into Panchikaranam and told you how Sthula Sharira came, how Sukshma Sharira came. Therefore, the whole Jagat is understandable. Carried us along, holding our fingers like a balaha. And now take us to the state of saying, okay, this is the Brahman that you have to understand. You started this quest. All of us started the quest without really understanding what we're looking for. I'm sure it's true of everybody. We heard words like moksha. Even that, we're lucky we heard those words. There are many people never heard of the word. Freedom. The only freedom they know is freedom from binding of the mobile phone. That's the only freedom. So on some days when your mobile phone is down, you feel, today I'm absolutely free. I have no binding today. We've all gone through that. We've all gone to that state. I'm bound. The moksha is something, because you've done something good in the previous janma, it is now being accessible to you. Not to everybody. They will also get it sooner or later, hopefully. Sometime in their life, they will understand this. Not in this life, perhaps, next janma, janma after the janma after that. Sometime they will understand. We are sitting at a place where Shruti and Shankaracharya is correct in calling us Mudaha. Not fools. Mudaha. You're almost there. One more step and you got it. Only that one step. All the variety you see in this Jagat, including you, if you can see in and through all of them the oneness, you're done. How do I see this? Shruti and Yamadharmaraja will take us through those steps in the next few verses. We'll take it up tomorrow. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri
Namaste Swamiji. Namaste
Hari
Swamiji.
Om.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Swamiji.
Om Swamiji.